Hola, it is the day. Mikel Merino. Aquí aterrizamos. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. I hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Really appreciate your time and your presence here as always. And I hope it's been a good week for you. I hope you've been able to enjoy just the pure frequency of news, to just keep you on your toes and to not bore you out. And it's just been non-stop. It's been non-stop exclusive. Like it's non-stop good news, non-stop new news. It's not been monotonous and boring at all. And I've not been sarcastic once throughout this entire monologue to start off today's show at all either. But good morning to those joining us in the chat box. Thank you so much, as always, for doing so. Really appreciate your time and your presence as per. Good morning to, we've got Amira and Tucker Boy, Sir Blue, Damien, Rich, Runs with Cows, Harvey, Temmie, Jitty, Paul, Goodness 76, Barry. We've got Loga and Edison, Jonathan. We've got Glenn and Knowledge and Brad and Martin and Boss Steve, James, Jose, Carl, Stephen, Shari. We've got Tony, Clincy, Jamil, Diane, Louis, Kim, Dellen, and plenty more of you guys and girls as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. Very much appreciate your time. And we've got a nice few messages in the chat box as well. MRM's been a member now for 2 years. Time flies when you're having fun. Thank you, mate. And Joe, thank you so much for becoming a brand new member of the channel. Thank you and welcome to our TGT family as well. There's some very kind messages in the chat box as well for Trevor from Peekahoo. Thinking of you, Trev, and Jim as well. Thank you very much, you two, for your super chats and for dedicating them very much so to our very valued member of the community, Trevor, who's been going through a difficult time, of course, recently as well. So thank you for your kind words. Sherry says, how are you, Tom? I'm good. Thank you, Sherry, for asking. And my question is, how many times do people call you Cherry? I mean, that might be your name, to be fair. I'd find that incredibly irritating. It's the English language and English names, I mean, Irish names. I'm going to be going to an Irish wedding in a few weeks' time. And Irish names compared to English names, it can always be tough. But goodness me. I mean, our good pal Owen, whose wedding I am traveling to. I was thinking about doing like a vlog of this, because of course me and Owen met. If you don't know who Owen is, Owen Young, who does the Gooners pods. I will end this intro soon, by the way, because I know some of you are very precious about my long intros. But Owen, of course, was a listener of the channel and then became a member of the channel. And now I'm going to his wedding because we've become very good friends. And I was thinking about doing a video that was like, I attended one of my subscribers' weddings and this is how it went. Hopefully it goes really badly because that will get more views on YouTube. It'll be like, I attended my subscriber's wedding and it went wrong. YouTube headlines, they get so many views. But yes. Good morning. Thank you for tuning in. Do drop a like. Help us to reach 1K every single day. And if you, of course, do have a complaint, make sure you write it down about the intro, of course, and how long the intros are. Write it down and leave it in my pigeonhole. And you can find that in any bin around you or anywhere else. Just pop it in there and it will find me, to quote the in-betweeners there. Good morning, though, and let's jump straight into today's stories. 4 minutes in, straight into today's stories. We start with Charlie Patino. And yesterday was the feeling around Charlie Patino was quite low, because £1 million was obviously what Arsenal are expected to get from Deportivo de La Coruña. And we certainly felt like that was going to be not really, representative of Charlie's value. Now, interestingly, yesterday more news came out about this deal, which is a lot more positive, a lot more optimistic. And there's a 50% sell-on clause in this, which is the first positive point of view. So any amount of money that Deportivo de La Coruña sell Charlie Patino 4. Arsenal will get half of that, which is obviously really good. A really, really good sell-on clause. Probably the best sell-on clause you're ever going to get in a deal. But not only that, but Arsenal have also included what is known as a first refusal clause, which means that any bids that any club ever make for Charlie Patino, Arsenal will have first refusal of matching that. And then, of course, Charlie can decide whether or not he wants to return or whether he wants to go somewhere else. But Arsenal will have first refusal on any potential future sale of Charlie. In some ways, it's almost like a glorified loan move. And so I think all of that negativity that came out yesterday, when we didn't have the full details of the deal, again, is just another big reminder to step back sometimes, to take a day, take a breath, wait till you got all the facts, and then come up with your view. So I think it's always worth, and these examples I think are good for providing clarity and a form of reflection and perspective for people maybe that react too negatively too quickly on deals. Meanwhile, Southampton, according to Sky Sports, are expected to make an approach to try and sign Aaron Ramsdale on loan for the rest of this season as well. And Ramsdale, of course, as we know, is expected to move on between now and the end of the window. This is Wolves and Southampton now that have been mentioned to potentially sign Ramsdale on loan. It does seem that a loan move is the most realistic scenario that we will see for Ramsdale this summer. A permanent deal is what Arsenal want. Arsenal at the moment, and I think probably until right at the end of the window, will be very much waiting to see if any permanent offers are on the table for Ramsdale. And yeah, I guess we will see what happens. But at the moment, only loan approaches so far. And Southampton are said to have made their move to try and sign the England international. Meanwhile, David Ornstein was speaking yesterday with Duncan Castles on a podcast talking about Arsenal's transfer situation. And he spoke at length about the wide position and the winger role in particular. And I wanted to relay some of what David said on that show because it was very interesting. The first point to bring up is that Nico Williams is discussed a lot in this section. And that discussion centers around the desire for him to be the guy. That Nico Williams is the number one player that Arsenal would like to sign in that position. Now, of course, Nico Williams has a buyout clause, upwards of £40 million, which on paper you'd think, well, it's quite cheap. Just go out and get him. Problem is with Nico Williams is because he plays for Athletic Club. They, as you should know, and if you don't, welcome to some education on a Friday morning. They have a Basque-only policy, which means that they only have players with Basque heritage or have come through or lived for the majority of their life, I guess. I don't know what the exact finite details are, of course, but you have to have some Basque in you or have have lived there or been born there, or you get the feeling. And so because of that, they never really spend any money on transfers. Athletic Club are one of the richest clubs in Spain because of their success, and their success is absolutely unbelievable considering the restrictions that they impose on themselves as a club. Their deals are for players at other teams, of course, that have got players from the Basque region, and they've become some of the best Basque players in the world, and then they bring them back, and they are able, because they've spent so little money, is because they then give them huge wages so they can stave off competition from other clubs that might want to poach their best stars because they give them really, really good money. So the players want to stay there. They've got that connection to the area. So they want to perform for their, home club effectively. And Nico Williams is very happy, from what we're hearing, to stay in the northern regions of Spain. And I have to admit that I respect it. I respect it a lot. So yes, I think that it's really important to point that out. So there's perspective with this. And it's also important to point out when people make the mistake of calling it Athletic Bilbao. This is the biggest mistake. One of my pet peeves, along with people calling it Atletico Madrid. Because it's Atletico Madrid. Long-time listeners to the channel will know my grievances with the pronunciation of that. And I'm no person to talk about correct pronunciations. I get the irony, I do. But yes, it's Athletic Club. You speak to any Athletic Club fans and call it Athletic Bilbao, and they'll tell you you're wrong. You're very much wrong. And loads of people make that mistake. I think David actually called it yesterday, Athletic Bilbao. And the first thing I thought was, I hope there's no Athletic Club fans listening. But yes, it's an interesting policy, but obviously it enables them to give them such high wages to their players. And Arsenal, of course, if they sign Nico Williams, will have to give him an even higher wage. And he's more of a left-sided player than a right-sided player, but he can play on the right. And Arsenal obviously are looking more so for a backup, is what David reported yesterday. It's far more that Arsenal want to try and sign a player that is kind of, in some ways, happy to be understudy. And I think the way to do that is to look at Manchester City with Julian Alvarez and, to a lesser extent, Savinho. I think you could look at the Liverpool method of signing a player like Shaqiri, or even the Arsenal method of looking at a player like Leandro Trossard. I think that Arsenal need to look at and need to use, and I think Edu in particular needs to utilize his South American contacts here. I don't think you're going to land a wide player in Europe necessarily that's going to give you the requisite quality that's willing to be an understudy. Whereas I think if you go to South America and you try and find, a young player in a different position in those wide areas, I think that is maybe Arsenal's best bet, is to go to those leagues where you find those talented youngsters like a Julian Alvarez, like a Savinho. And we've tried to do that before with Marquinhos, and it's not worked out. So I guess there's pros and cons, but I just feel as though that's the only thing that's stopping us right now. Anyway, we move on to Ademola Lookman, who was mentioned yesterday quite heavily. I think it was Padello that reported this story. It seemed to be kind of rubbished almost immediately, and it was suggested that, of course, that he'd already kind of returned to Atalanta training and that he was set to hold talks of Atalanta. Well, Florian Pletterberg of Sky Germany reported yesterday that actually he's now agreed terms with PSG. However, no talks yet have taken place between the French club and the Italian side so far about a deal, and that he did mention that Arsenal are monitoring this situation. And they may intend to move for Lookman if indeed the deal with PSG breaks down. But it is interesting that this situation has kind of, this situation has developed quite strangely, and now PSG are in the fold, and it's an odd one. I'd be shocked if this. I said this yesterday, to take it with a rather large pinch of salt. I'd be shocked if this was a deal that happened, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. But the headline news and the relieving news, if you will, is of course of Mikel Merino. As I said at the beginning of my intro, today's show, Aquí aterrizamos, which for those that don't speak Spanish, like me, and use Google Translate this morning, means here we land regarding Mikel Merino. He is going to be an Arsenal player after, in principle, Arsenal have agreed a 33.5 million euro plus 5 million euro in add-ons deal. Edu found the middle ground. Edu went and negotiated with Joaquin Aperebe, the president of Real Sociedad, and has come back with a compromise. We didn't go the full way of paying that 40 million euros that Real Sociedad wanted. They didn't come down to the 35 million euros that we were willing to offer initially, and we found an agreement between the clubs. And this is a figure that means that Arsenal will get the player that they wanted for less, in an upfront fee of less than £29 million, which I think, again, represents another really, really good business. Really, really good business for Arsenal. He comes in, he's a potential starter in a market where for so long we've been talking about how difficult it will be for Arsenal to improve the starting 11. And they've brought in two players so far in Calafiori and Merino, and David Raya, of course, as well, who signed on a permanent. But Calafiori and Merino, who could both be potential starters for us by the time they establish themselves in this team. So, and we've got Yuri and Timber, of course, who is going to improve this team this season. So, yeah, it's looking positive. It's looking good, and I'm really excited I did watch our good friend of the channel, Rambo FYI, who's Nabaid, who does a lot of work with Sky Sports. And he actually did a little bit of a feature on Sky Sports News the other day, talking in depth about him, like Mikel Merino, basically being like the successor a year later to Granit Xhaka. And I think there are a lot of comparisons that you can make between Merino and, of course, Xhaka. There are differences between the two, and there are important differences, but I think that what's important that this is, whereas the people kind of thought that Declan Rice was the replacement, he never was. And I always said that Declan Rice is not a replacement for Granit Xhaka. We haven't replaced him. And now I think that finally, a year later, we brought in a player that is replacing that. A left footer, a progressive passer who likes to score a goal, but is also a dogged jeweler of a footballer, wins so many duels. And of course, provides an aerial threat. These are the differences between him and Xhaka. But yes, it's really good. It's a really exciting deal, and I can't wait to see what he does. I really can't wait to see what happens, because I think it's a really astute piece of business by Arsenal. And you can do an astute piece of business, of course, by adding to your Arsenal the best VPN service on the network, which is, of course, NordVPN. And I'm very happy that so many of you have really got involved with Nords over the last few weeks. I was talking to somebody, our rep over there, and they said that, you know, the TGC family's done a great job, and they are carrying on with us as well. I'm really happy to say, because of your hard work and because of how much you want to support the channel, which is amazing. So thank you, and continue, if you haven't already, to become a TGT NordVPN advocate by going to nordvpn.com and getting yourself a discount off a 1 or a 2-year plan. It's 2024. It's a new Premier League season. You need a VPN. It's just one. You just need one. Keep yourself safe online. Keep yourself secured. Stop those pesky little trackers and data takers from looking at your stuff. You know, you want to know that what you're looking at is what you're looking at, and not what someone's watching you look at what you're looking at. If that made sense. And of course, you can change your geolocation to anywhere in the territories, of course, that Nord supports as well. So if you hop to France or to Spain, like I sometimes do for football, you can hop back digitally and watch the things that you wouldn't be able to watch typically in other countries as well. So it's great. I recommend you do it. NordVPN.com/Gooner, and the link is down in the description. Right, let's go to part 2 and your questions right after this. Okay, this is part 2 of the show, where, of course, we jump into the chat box and tackle as many of your thoughts, questions, queries, and theories as we can. But we're going to start with an intro to part 2, courtesy of Carl, who says, "Complaint. Sorry, Tom, but your intros are too short. YouTube cuts off the beginning as I won't pay for premium, and therefore I miss it because of the ads, especially if I'm slow on the skip button." Sorry, Carl, that you miss sometimes the intro. I will endeavor to lengthen them for you. For those that don't like the intros and maybe listen to this on catch up, you are able to click any of the chapters. I take the time after the shows go out live to add chapters to the bottom of this show so that you don't have to watch the adverts. You're also able to do something called fast forwarding at your own leisure if you're not watching live, of course. But if you tune in live, you must enjoy watching live. So I'm hoping that you enjoy all of the aspects of the show. Louis has been a member now for 22 months with us. 1K every day. Come on, you Gooners. Thank you, Louis. Damien's been a member now for 13 months. We're winning the quad this season, Damien says. Come on, you Gooners. And Illumide, who says he's a brand new member, is actually with the channel as well, which is really great news. This isn't the only show that you're going to be getting today, of course. 5 o'clock UK time today will be our preview show, looking ahead to the game against Aston Villa. So very much looking forward to that. You'll be joined by some of our members from the Discord server. If you've not yet seen the message I put in the members Discord and you're part of our community here, make sure you raise your interest in coming on today's show at 5 o'clock. I'll be putting a reminder into the members Discord a little bit later on for that slot. I think there is a slot still available. So I'll put a reminder for you guys that are in our Discord server, and you can be in our Discord server by becoming a member of the channel, either an expert member or a TGT ambassador. Right, so let's jump to the chat, shall we? Derek says, Tom, did you hear the Mudryk comments from the manager? I would absolutely take a punt on him now. Shall we have a look? What has Enzo Maresca said? Now, I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be really fun. I'm really much looking forward to it. Oh, my goodness. Have you ever been on... I tell you what, this is something that I know a good advert for a VPN is that I've started to notice that, usually what you go onto a website and you're like, ask not to track or like reject cookies and things like this. And it's saying that like you have to now pay to reject stuff on certain websites. I don't know if you've noticed this. Well, it's another potential use for a VPN, I guess. But that's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Anyway, so yeah, let's jump into these quotes, shall we? And we look at Maresca, who's been talking about Mudryk. Why can't I find show me the quotes, damn it. I just want the quotes. That's all I want. I'm clicking so many buttons and I'm not getting them. Mudryk blows Chelsea auditioners. Maresca explodes with rage despite Servette win. I'm not seeing this. I'm not seeing this still. Still not seeing this either. Maresca flexes his muscles. Nope. Still not getting the quotes. Maybe someone put them in the chat box for me because I'm looking at all these websites trying to find these quotes. And I'm not. Maybe Twitter. Twitter, I think, is probably the best place to look, isn't it? That will get me the quotes, surely. I think this is Mudryk, not only tonight, but since he joined the club. When he has the ball, you don't know if it's one thing or another thing. Oh my goodness, that's pretty brutal. That's not great man management, is it? Not great at all. Arteta annoys people sometimes. With like his protection for players and like how he talks about his players when some players have had a bad game. And if you ask about a player having a bad game to Arteta, he will not reference that because he protects them. And some people get frustrated by that. I don't, because I know the job. I know the job of the manager. Like they are going to protect the players from the media. If you've ever watched the All or Nothing documentary, The Loss at Newcastle, go listen to Arteta speaking to the players after they were beaten by Newcastle and we missed out on Champions League qualification. Go and listen to him speaking after that game. And he talks about how he's going to protect. He says to the players, I'm going to protect you in there. But obviously he's going to say what he thinks about them in the dressing room. And that's a job of a manager. Now, Maresca is still a new coach. And so is Arteta, to be fair to him. Like, Arteta's still young and still early in his coaching career, but he knows it. Maresca is in the last... I respect him breaking up the squad and keeping the players that he wants to use, right? I think that's fine. But the way he spoke about Sterling and the way he's spoken about some other players, he's tanked their value. Absolutely. People complain about Arteta tanking players' values by not playing them. Maresca's come straight to Chelsea, a team that desperately need to sell. And he's just completely talked down the value of loads of their players. And now he's doing it with players that he's actually using. Players that he actually has got in the 21 or so that he's chosen to keep. It's, absolutely mad. I think some of the quotes that are coming from Maresca right now, and I had Lopetegui down as the first manager I have to get sacked this season, just because I think West Ham has spent so much money and have got such a good side. If they don't do well, I think he could go. But Maresca, I tell you what, continues on this way. The Chelsea don't improve, even though they beat Servette last night, but it wasn't exactly convincing. And of course, Guy, the striker they bought from Barca, missing an open goal. Yeah, it's not great. Would I take Mudryk? No. No, I wouldn't. And I wouldn't take Sterling either. I don't want projects. Havertz was a project that I, at the time, was sceptical about and obviously was proven very much wrong to be sceptical because it's been a great decision to bring Havertz in. The whole project thing now, though, I just think that we need players that are going to improve us and players that are in good form or on the up. And we don't need another project. We don't need another project at all. And I think we need players that are going to come in and give you an immediate impact, like Merino, like Calafiori. They're on good form. in a good mode of their career and at different stages of their career, sure, but still in good positions to come in and give us something positive. Let's scroll up a little bit, shall we? I feel like I might have missed some things. Stephen's been a member with us now for 32 months. Thank you, Stephen. That's a long, long time that you've been supporting us, and I really, really do appreciate it. Let's go to Jimmy. Says being coveted by everybody is such a cop-out and a weak argument. Of course he's coveted by everybody. I know it's a cliche, but we didn't move to the Emirates to finally compete, but be afraid because of other clubs could potentially be in for him. And if he's so coveted by other clubs, why has no one come in and activated his release clause as of yet? Jimmy, I think it's a fair point you raise, and I know you're talking about Nico Williams here. The reason why clubs aren't paying the release clause is because, and I think there was actually a question earlier on that asked the question about how can we have agreed personal terms with the player despite not agreeing a fee with the club? Because obviously, here it is. Johan says, how can a player agree personal terms when the clubs haven't spoken to each other? So again, I always point people in the direction of a video that James Gunnerplug did. I'll see if I can find it and I'll put it into the chat box for you. How a transfer works. Here it is. How football transfers are actually done is what the video is called. Brilliant, brilliant video, and explains a lot of the nuances of how like unofficial certain things are in transfers. How talks can go on between the club and a player or their intermediaries before anything actually happens. And you might think they're called what's tapping up, as it's so often referenced to. But loads of things have and do go on unofficially just to get a feel if the player's up for coming to the club. Like, why would a club waste the resources of putting in bids, of coming up with all the legalities of a transfer just to be rejected by the player? Why would they do that? So a lot of things go on unofficially to gauge the interest of players, to understand if that player is open to a move. So it's all well and good saying that, Arsenal should just go in and buy the player out. We're a big enough team, we're a rich enough team, just go and pay the buyout clause. But if they haven't got the feeling from Williams that if they go in and activate the buyout clause that he'll come, they would have wasted time and resources and effort on, putting together the deal, getting it signed off by the owners, putting it forward to the club, and then getting a no. And sometimes you need to try and convince the players to sign. You need to show them the pathway. You need to show them opportunities. You can show them the project. You need to convince them that this is a better place to come to than Barcelona, who obviously we know Nico Williams is a big, big admirer of and has a dream of playing there one day, and when they can actually afford him, which I don't think they can at the moment. That's why they can't even register Dani Olmo at the moment. Don't let people tell you that Barcelona are fine financially when they're struggling to even register Dani Olmo after getting rid of Gundogan. They still can't do it. So the whole Nico Williams situation is not as simple as just activate the release clause and it's yours. And that's why a lot of things go on unofficially. Amara Gooner says, Tom, doesn't the club speak to agents and vice versa? Of course, all the time. It's intermediaries are an absolute necessary part of football. It's just the modern day way that it works. It's not like the old days where, David Dean would ring up the Crystal Palace owner and be like, look, I want to buy Ian Wright. And as he was talking about on the overlap the other day, it's just not that way anymore. Players have got, representation, and intermediaries take certain level of cut, and you need to work out so much. Transfers are so much harder than people think. And not only that, but there's also something to be said about how I've completely lost my train of thought. Hold on. There's something to be said about ultimately where a club is going to go with a deal, and if it doesn't go their way, if they've then missed out on other potential players. So they might have chased a player and then missed out on somebody else. And I can't come up with an example for that happening to Arsenal top of my head. I'm not sure if it has recently, but yeah, it's a tricky one. Damien says, so the tapping up law means nothing these days. It's kind of one of those things, Damien, that I'm trying to explain this in the best way possible. Clubs are prohibited from, quote, tapping players up. But loads of things just go on unofficially all the time. And it's kind of just, It's kind of just one of those things that blind eyes get turned to, I guess, because it's a necessary part of the game, and it makes the transfer window run a lot smoother than it would otherwise do. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with that. But I'll attempt to answer any further questions on that. But as I say, it's kind of all a bit grey area type thing. Grantley Poo says, is Ian Wright available? Yes, please. If only we could get an equivalent, that would be absolutely fantastic, of course. TPF says, Tom, would you have taken Joao Felix on loan if he didn't go Chelsea? Absolutely not. No. I don't know why. This is the problem I have with the perspective of some Arsenal fans, that there is a desperation from so many fans just to see someone that they're willing to get anyone. And I can tell you that that's not worth toffee. It's really not. Just signing anyone for the sake of anyone is not it. Even if you've just got a body there, like, and people are like, well, you know, maybe we're in a situation where there's some injuries. Jesus is injured. We need to rotate Saka. Martinelli might be injured. You know, so it's better that we have Sterling there, or it's better that we have Felix there. No, you know, I'm in favour of some players over no one. Like, I'd sign Kingsley Coman on a loan rather than not getting anyone, for instance, as an example, because I think Kingsley Coman has genuinely got the talent and the impact to make a difference at Arsenal for a season, for instance. But Sterling is on £300,000 per week, I think, maybe more. Felix always was not available for a loan. It was always going to be a permanent deal, as Chelsea have shown. And the idea of just getting in anybody, just for the sake of getting in anybody, just goes against everything that we've done in the last few years to build the squad up to what we are now, you know. So I just can't get on board with the whole sign somebody, anybody, because that's not how we've built ourselves to where we are now, by signing anybody. You know, if we don't think the right player is there, we won't sign them. You know, we will not sign a player for the sake of signing a player anymore. We used to do it, and then fans moaned about him. Fans moaned about, you know, your Andre Santos deals and your Denis Suarez deals, and, you know, these just rushed transfers for the sake of bringing in a body. You know, we don't need to do that anymore. We really, really don't. Think about the last panic signing. I was on the podcast with James Sharoy and Babs the other day, and I think it was Sharoy that said, "Think about the last time we signed a panic buy." I think the last time that I can think of a deadline day signing that you was like, you know, a bit of a panic buy was Tomiyasu in some ways. Tomiyasu have signed on like the last day of the season. There were suggestions that we were interested in Emerson all the way through the window. That obviously didn't happen, and instead, and Spurs are being linked to Tomiyasu, and eventually the other way around happened. Spurs signed Emerson and we signed Tomiyasu. I don't know if that's really a panic buy. Jorginho is sometimes brought up. I don't think Jorginho was a panic buy. Jorginho was an alternative. Trossard was an alternative. We wanted Caicedo, couldn't get him. We put in massive bids for him, didn't get him. And so Jorginho was seen as a Jorginho was a Ballon d'Or candidate, you know, a year or two before we signed him. That's no panic buy. And his impact on the team is not that of a panic buy. So no, Jorginho was no panic buy. He was just a decent alternative. I'm really struggling to think of who the last panic buy was. And I can see people in the chat box suggesting Jorginho and Trossard. I don't think you know what a panic. I don't think you appreciate how much panic we had after we lost 8-2 to Manchester United and ended up signing. I think after that game was Arteta, Mertesacker, and Andre Santos came in, did they not? Thank goodness we signed Arteta, because who knows, we may not be here today. But yeah, like, they're panic deals. Lucas Perez. I know I tried to make sense that, and I liked Perez at Deportivo when he was there in La Liga, and he had a really good season. But my goodness me, that was a panic buy. £17 million. You know, that was a panic buy. And Barry says Pepe. I mean, that's an expensive panic buy, if you want to call it. Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Very, 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 very tricky. TGR says a market opportunity is still a panic buy at times. Of course, you know, some market opportunities are panic buys, but I just don't think that those those ones that people have suggested, like Trossard or Jorginho, could be described as panic buys. I think they would have been players that Arsenal. I mean, Jorginho was literally linked to Arsenal for 3 summers before we signed him. He was a player that Arteta always liked, was always on Arteta's books as a player that he wanted to sign. You know, when we were linked to Partey and Houssem Aouar, I remember the deadline day where Jorginho's name came forward and fans went into meltdown when Jorginho's name was mentioned. So, yeah, panic buys is just not something we really do. We're looking for a backup now. That's what we're looking for. And Arsenal are looking for a player that knows that if they sign for Arsenal, they are not going to be a regular starter. And that's tough. Really, really hard to do. Really hard to sign a player like that. And I think that, as I mentioned in part 1 of the show, I think that maybe you need to look at the South American market. That might be where you need to go to try and find one of these players. Get in a 20, 21-year-old Julian Alvarez type deal and find that guy for 10 to 50. I mean, he cost 60 million quid, Alvarez, to City. 60 million pounds. And there's a lot of work and effort, to my knowledge and my understanding of what the club have done, of really investing in scouting in South America. I'm not going to sit here and tell you names. I'm not the guy scouting South America, but Arsenal, I know, have invested in scouting in South America. And of course, you've got a sporting director that's got massive ties to the Brazilian national side as well. So I have to say that I think that's probably where I would look. It's probably where I would go to. It doesn't have to be Brazil. Argentina, Uruguay. I'm naming countries from my geography teacher days, but and I know it's not always going to work. Marquinhos is a great example of that. I mentioned his name earlier in the show, but there are much higher rated players than Marquinhos in Brazil, and we should maybe have a look. We should maybe be looking at a few of them, and maybe that's where you go to try and find the talent. That's maybe where you go and try and find the backup option that knows they're not going to be a regular starter, but is going to get some opportunity off the bench playing for a club like Arsenal. That might be the way forwards. So yeah, South America. That's the way forwards, I think. Green says, Tom, why are Premier League clubs not scouting from the African continent? Work permits, mainly. Work permits are usually quite a big issue when it comes to the Premier League and signing players. It's why often you see clubs like Red Bull Salzburg, for instance, have a huge influx of African players. Red Bull Salzburg have done brilliant work at scouting in Africa, and you've seen players like Sadio Mane, of course. You've seen players like oh goodness me, Haidara is another one. Of course, came through the ranks there. Is it Mwepu, who sadly I think had sadly had something happened. I think he had a heart issue, did he not, Enoch Mwepu? And he was at Brighton and sadly had to retire at a really young age, but was exceptionally talented midfielder. Came through the ranks there, played, went to Brighton from Salzburg, was linked to Arsenal, I think I remember as well. Patson Daka. So yeah, it's there's a work permit issue. There's always been a bit of a work permit issue when it comes to Premier League teams buying from Africa. I don't know if and obviously Brexit and after Brexit, a lot of changes happened that also made it tougher for teams to sign players at a young age as well from even European sides. So yeah, it's definitely difficult for Premier League clubs to get the work permits, and that's why sometimes they have to see how they get on at other European clubs in Austria and other places before they then make a move for those players. So yeah, it's usually like a logistical legality reason why scouting doesn't. I mean, scouting will happen, and they'll follow players and they'll be aware of players, but they'll be following them as they then move into Europe. And then once they've moved to Europe, more resources will be directed towards that kind of element, if you will. Phil Ed says, Tom, what would you do with Reece Nelson if we don't bring in another winger but get offered a suitable fee? I don't think Arteta's trusts him enough to play significant minutes. I think it would be a big mistake to sell Reece Nelson and not sign a wide player. Even if we got offered, say, 10 to 15 million pounds for Nelson on deadline day. If we're not signing a wide player, I don't think I would. I don't think I would sell Nelson, because what we do know about Nelson is that he can make an impact. He's not a player that we know, that's offered next to nothing. He's, in my opinion, he's a good player. He's not an amazing player. He's not necessarily even a great player, but he's a good player. I think he's of a Premier League standard, personally. I think he would start for Premier League teams in the bottom half of the table. But personally, I think if we aren't going to sign a wide player, selling Nelson would be a mistake. So, yeah. Ahmed Khan says, do we still have Marquinhos at right wing? He's on loan at, I want to say Corinthians, I think. I think it might be Corinthians that he's on loan with. Fluminense. Sorry, Fluminense he's at on loan. So that's where he is. And he's there until January, actually. His loan is until. So he's on loan until January. Amir Gooner says, Tom, the next transfer window should be Nketiah to Forest. That should be the next transfer. We were expecting that to. That's getting closer, and hopefully we'll go through, and then we can have a little apology form show if that indeed does take place. Rob says, here all season for Chelsea, taking bets on 1, how long Maresca will last, 2, how many points deducted for PSR, 3, how many seasons before they're relegated, and 4, how many years before bankruptcy and a player fire sale. Khan says, 0 links for Nelson. Will we replace Eddie with a forward? I hope so, but I'm not optimistic. I know I was listening to Charles and TNAT on their show the other day, and they seem that they kind of were agreeing that they feel we will sign one. I'm less optimistic about Arsenal signing a wide player. I'm hopeful, but I'm not optimistic, is the way I'd put it. So I've got hope, but I don't have optimism at the moment about a wide player coming in. There's 2,200 of you watching across all of our platforms this morning, which is crazy. Thank you so much for your kind support. You're absolutely brilliant. This is, as I always say, the best community on the platform. And if you're here and you're new, subscribe. I mean, we hit 59,000 subs 2 days ago, and we're already on 59,133 as I read this right now. So we're already on our way to 60K. And as I mentioned, this year we have a target of trying to hit the Emirates Stadium capacity of 60,704 seats in 2024. That is our target. And our good member Louis as well has been producing some graphics, letting me know when we have reached certain stages of that capacity. I don't know if we've got a recent one. 59,000 subscribers. Let me see if I can get it for you. Yes, I can. Let's show you what capacity of the stadium we have full, thanks to our good friend of the show, Louis, who's produced these with TGT graphics. You got to respect the effort that Louis's gone into doing this. Where are we? Don't stop sharing. There we go. There's the graphic that Louis provided for us. Is Louis in the chat box? I think I saw him earlier. I think he was putting a thing about how long you've been a member for. We're 97% full. So we got that little section there. So if you sit there in the Emirates, make sure you're subscribed. And if you're sitting next to anyone, get them to subscribe, please. We're just missing you guys. Everything else, it's crazy when you look at it in this fashion, isn't it? When you look at it in that sense of how many people are actually subscribed to the channel, and it's only that little shaded or highlighted section that isn't, that's how many people are in this community now. That's mental. Absolutely mental, that number of people when you put it in that way. So thank you for your continued support of the channel. You're absolutely awesome. Make sure you drop a like on the video as well. I'm going to give you a few more minutes, actually. I think we're going to take a few more questions before I wrap things up. As I say, there will be another show a little bit later on today, 5 o'clock, preview show looking ahead to this game against Aston Villa. I'm also going to be speaking to an Arsenal Invincible later on this afternoon, and not on the channel, but for an interview, which you'll be able to catch a little bit later elsewhere. So look out for that. Get your guesses in the comment section who you think it might be. I nearly gave you a clue, but I think it's too telling. Too telling indeed. Right. And Mr. Rad says, I was sure I subscribed and I just noticed I'm not. I'll sort that right now. And this is the thing. So YouTube unsubscribes people. I don't get it. It's really strange. Really, really strange. And I don't quite understand it. Zach says, what are your thoughts on the new Champions League format? I'm not sure about it, but I'm sure I'll get used to it. Is this a hot take? I really like it. I know people don't like change. And I know it's more games. And I know it's a bit Super League-y. I really like it. I really like the changes to the Champions League. The reasons why, I'll give you the reasons why I like the new Champions League format. The league system, I kind of like. It comes across like a Super League shill type thing. But I like the league thing. I like the league system, and I think it does generate kind of an exciting kind of across games. Like there's no dead games really, because all of the games have different connotations. There'll be teams that just get into the top 16 and teams that just get into the top 8 come the last game of those 8 runs. My issue with it is I think it's too many games. Expanding it was a mistake. And I just think that is I just think it's an error. I just think it should have stayed at what it was. But I guess because you got 4 pots, you have to have 8 games. Otherwise, you'd have to have 3 pots, but make them larger, I guess. I don't know if that would work. Obviously, we're not going to have the same drama with the draw anymore because the draws are done by AI and computers, which is obviously going to open up a whole can of worms when it comes to, Arsenal have been drawn against Real Madrid at home and Bayern Munich away from pot 1. So, that you can see what's going to happen. You know, and to be honest, I'd love that. I think that's great. And that's another element of it I quite like, that you're going to be able to get some amazing games in the first stage of the competition. So I kind of like it. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to seeing how we get on, and I'm looking forward to seeing our system. And of course, what I do like also is that the knockout section is the same as before. It's still just knockout. It's still 2 legs, home and away, and that knockout drama stays the same. Yes, there's some seeding, which is a bit. I don't know about seeding. And of course, we have the knockout round now, but we had that anyway, to a degree with the whole Euro Champions League, third place, Europa League. There was always a playoff round for that, but I suppose there's now a playoff round for Champions League as well, which is an extra potential couple of games. Basically, just finishing the top 8. That's what we need to do. Finish in the top 8. So I'm looking forward to it. So Nicholas says, Tom, they changed the Champions League music. Yes, they did. Again, I don't really care. I know that some people are annoyed. It's basically the same. It's just got a few more trumpets. Which, if you're a fan of Rizzle Kicks, I put this tweet out yesterday. If you're a fan of Rizzle Kicks, they're making their return next week. They're a 2-person, half rap, half sing song type duo. Nice couple of lads apparently, and they're coming back next week, Rizzle Kicks, with a new song called Javelin, which I'm a big fan of from the little snippet I've heard of it. I'm not a publicist for them or anything. This is just my youth, my childhood is Rizzle Kicks. And I remember, down with the trumpets and when I was a youngster. That's the name of the song. It wasn't just me using those words, but go give them a listen. They're good. They're fun. They're happy. I like happy songs. And I always thought they were happy. So yeah, there you go. Go listen to them because they're coming back next Friday, and I'm looking forward to their new song coming out. And I'm a drum and bass man, so and it's not drum and bass. So it's very mainstream. It was very mainstream back in the day. So for those hipster music fans out there, it's probably not to your taste, but it's good to see them back. And they did, and there's an Arsenal connection there as well, because you should remember the purple and black kit, away kit. It was like horizontal, purple and black. Well, Rizzle Kicks were the people that featured. They were the band that featured in the announcement video for our purple and black kit. So yeah, there is an Arsenal link there. They're both Arsenal boys, so show them some support. But if you remember that black and purple horizontal with the red sleeves kit, Podolski scored. It was the year we signed Giroud, Podolski, Santi. So what was that? 2012, 13, I think, the away kit for that season. yeah, there's an Arsenal link there, so you should support them. Please do. Please do. I can see a lot of you guessing who I might be speaking to. I've got to say, Mohammed's given us about 15 guesses, so it's less impactful, mate, if you get them wrong. And if you get it right. Yes, Liverpool, that game where Abu Diaby had an absolute stormer of a game at Anfield, and we won 2-0. Podolski and Santi Cazorla with the goals. Really, I think this might be the last time we won at Anfield in the league. I think it might be the last time we won there, actually, now from memory. Green Weather says, Tom, will you be in the football conversation with James Beard and Sharoy more often? I love the chat on the Nketiah stuff. I hope so. It was really fun, and I enjoyed it, and I'll always welcome them over here, and I hope it's vice versa. Sam says there's over 1,500 of you on YouTube and only 565 likes. Oh, come on, guys. There's a third of you freeloaders. Make sure you drop a like before you go. It is very, very much appreciated. 1942 Biko says, do you think Adin Gra would open to a bigger move to a bigger club with the prospect of winning titles while accepting that squad rotation, knowing he can push Martinelli? The problem I've got with Adin Gra is that he is more left-sided, as you point out. And I just think that we need to push for a right-sided player. Again, that is for me, that's the bigger crux of that issue with the wide player. Right, we're going to end the show there. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Really appreciate your time. Make sure you drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. I'll be back with you at 5 o'clock this afternoon for a preview show. I look forward to speaking to some of our members about the game against Aston Villa tomorrow afternoon, which I'm going to be missing the second half of. It's my anniversary weekend, and we're going away for our anniversary. I'm still going to be doing the AM shows, don't you worry. But we booked a dinner at a certain time. Months ago, we booked this dinner, and then they're going to move the game to 5:30. So I am, gutted about that. So I'm going to be catching up on the game. But it is what it is. It's just, things are more important than football, believe it or not. Family, friends, get your priorities in line is what I say. Thank you for listening, people. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.